And it is time for WWE Money in the Bank 2019. The predictions here on SCW. Myself, Steve, joined here with James. We're going to be talking everything WWE. And, of course, the Money in the Bank pay-per-view is this Sunday. We've got all the matches. We're going to go from top to bottom. And we're going to be giving our picks of who we think are going to be the Money in the Bank winners, as well as the other matches as well. So without further ado, before we get into anything, make sure if you're watching on YouTube to please subscribe to the channel right now. Keep up to date with everything going on. You could be listening in podcast form as well. SCW The Wrestling Channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many more. We'll throw a selection on the bottom of the screen for you if you're watching on YouTube of where you can follow us, and link in the description on the podcast as well. We can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The list is endless. But enough of the plugs. We're going to go straight into Money in the Bank. But first off, James, how are you feeling?
I'm very good, Steve. It's nice weather here in the UK, which is always good, so that brightens up anyone's day. But also with Money in the Bank coming up this weekend, it's interesting times in the wrestling world.
It certainly has. It's been a very interesting few weeks. We've had quite a lot of ups and downs getting here, but certainly is always an exciting event of the year. I think it really feels like there used to be a big four. This is now kind of a big five now. This is almost one of the real important pay-per-views of the year. We really have the ability to make a new star here with perhaps even 2 stars with these Money in the Bank ladder matches. And it feels the last couple of years we've kind of had almost a failure from WWE in this. We had obviously Braun Strowman found with the cash in last year. Baron Corbin the year before actually found as well with his cash in. I think it's important in the men this year that we perhaps get a successful one, and also perhaps someone that holds the case for a lengthy time. Would you agree?
I definitely think we need a successful one. Like you say, considering this is probably one of the top events now, I would say, in the course of the calendar year for wrestling. To have the last 2 men's matches come without any reward really is seems a bit poor, really. But I'm not too worried about how quickly either the male or the female winner cashes it in. I just think it needs to be a successful cash in.
Yeah, I agree with you as well, and hopefully we're going to get some decent competitors winning and get some decent matches out of it. But we're going to go through the card from top to bottom, and like any pay-per-view, we should always start with the kickoff, which surprisingly is not the Cruiserweight title. This must be a first in a long time. We've not got the Cruiserweight Championship currently listed as a kickoff match, so we'll be talking about that later in the video if you were looking forward to that one. I'm sure 1 or 2 maybe somewhere out there were. But what we are going to be talking about is the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, Daniel Bryan and Rowan, an interesting team being formed together since we were last here discussing on SCW, going to be taking on the Usos, who of course are part of Monday Night Raw. So we've had the Wildcard situation thrown here, and we've kind of almost got a Wildcard tag team match made here. Of course, as Big E tweeted not long ago, everybody loves rematches. This match was done recently on SmackDown Live. We are getting it here once again, but it is a kickoff match, and it should I think be a decent hot opener to get the crowd on side before we get into the pay-per-view.
Yeah, definitely. Forgetting about what's happened just recently with the Usos, which seems a bit of a joke really on Raw, between them and the Revival. Them versus Bryan and Rowan. I mean, Bryan on his own will be, top draw for kickoff. Whether he's 100% yet, I don't know. I know he's been involved in a couple of matches, but maybe this is a bit of protection for him. That's what I was thinking the other day about him being involved in the tag division for a little bit. I'm not sure just how serious this injury that he supposedly got after Mania or from Mania has affected him, but maybe this just keeps him a little bit safer, having him in tag team wrestling for a stint. I think they'll come away still with the belts, to be honest with you. I can't see the benefit of the Usos, who arguably are the better tag team. I can't see the benefit of them holding the SmackDown titles when they've already drafted over to Raw. And this wildcard thing for me is a bit bizarre. But if we're going to predict how that's going to go for me, it's Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan win.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, certainly for me as well, looking at this, like you say there, the wild card thing, and we could talk about that very quickly. It's something I was going to try and bring up later in the video. And like you say, it's been very bizarre the way it was thrown up, and there are some good and some bad things that can come from it. And arguably, one of the good things that could come from this is if someone comes from the other show and wins a championship. You arguably kind of go, well, what's the situation with these superstars? And you sort of start to have that unpredictability factor. And that part of it is a successful idea. The only thing for me that really makes this an unsuccessful idea is that we've had the Usos on both Raw and SmackDown for the last 2 weeks. We've had The Miz on both shows for the last 2 weeks. Same with Shane McMahon and Elias. And we've had other people cross over. And then you see these other guys in the mid card who just aren't getting any TV time at all. And for me, that just kind of makes you feel like almost, well, we're getting these superstars that are probably being shoved down our throats again. This is the fear factor. And of course, you understand it from a ratings perspective, and perhaps maybe the fact that WWE is going to be split on 2 different broadcasting stations, that they probably think, well, hang on, we need Roman Reigns on our channel. We need it on that side of WWE. And almost the pressure to end the brand split. And to end it would be a really bad thing, in my opinion, for WWE, because there's so many talents that so many people will get lost and there would be nowhere to go for them. But at the same time, you look at it and say that there is going to be a number of talents when you have so little of TV time, really, when you think about it. I mean, if it's 5 hours, it's a lot of time to fill, but for the amount of superstars they've got, it's not enough to keep everybody on TV, and it's certainly not enough time to keep everybody happy. Yes, like we mentioned a minute ago, it's enough time to embarrass the Revival every week, but it's not enough time to get people, great talents like Buddy Murphy, Cedric Alexander. Those guys are not finding TV time. And in fact, Apollo Crews, who has just moved over to SmackDown Live from Raw, had to come to Raw to get TV time this week. Makes no sense whatsoever when you look at it from that perspective. The Riot Squad perhaps being repackaged, not been on TV at all since the shake-up. There's lots of superstars that are currently experiencing what catering is like, and that really is not a good thing for WWE programming, especially when you look at the talents that are being heavily forced down our throats. You could argue that perhaps maybe someone like Roman Reigns who's had a very mixed reaction over his career, is going to go to start to lean towards that again. He's been cheered recently. And we could even argue someone like Becky Lynch. Of course, now she's got all the wave of momentum in the world, but would it be an argument to say that if she's on TV twice a week, every week, that she's going to become stale pretty quickly?
Exactly, Steve. And don't get me wrong, I imagine fans of SmackDown and fans of Raw will want to see talent from the opposite brand. But let's be honest, most fans these days watch both, whether they're watching it live in the States or they're watching it on TV. So, you know, you're still seeing both brands anyway. It's not like it has to be that they appear on both. And, you know, it brings questionable things. If you look into it a bit further, you know, Survivor Series, that was supposed to be the event where you have the cross-brand matches, you have, you know, and that's a build to that. If this becomes the norm, Survivor Series isn't actually going to be that interesting, because a lot of these will have probably already fought each other. I believe we've got another event. We talked about it before. I think you mentioned it on last week's show, maybe, that an event's been rebranded or renamed.
Yes, so we've got Stomping Grounds coming in June.
Well, to me, I mean, I don't know it for sure yet, but to me, Stomping Grounds seems a little bit along the same lines of a rival between 2 brands. It may not be, but, you know, it could easily go down that sort of cross-branded event as well. So you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned some of the talents there, Buddy Murphy, Cedric Alexander. There's probably a whole host of other wrestlers that we haven't mentioned, but that have come up and not really had the rub of the road. I mean, we've had Mojo Rawley shoved down our throats for weeks now, and he's only just now starting to get a little bit of TV time, which, I mean, it's painful. Like, you know, to have to. Are things that bad that they're having to do this to keep the viewer ratings up? I mean, it's interesting. It's you know, with a time where AEW are now starting to make big noise. You know, I think it was today that their TV package deal has been agreed now with TNT. You know, they're going to start. I mean, some of the names that they're going to be getting. I mean, John Moxley, aka Dean Ambrose. They reckon that's been leaked now because of the former Jack Swagger, Dan Hager, is that his name, or Jack Hager? He supposedly let that one out of the bag. There's loads going on, and AEW must be laughing really, because they'll be able to snap some of these people up.
Yeah, and it seems that a lot of talents would be interested to go in that direction. They like the idea of healthy competition. If they're not happy in WWE, I mean, there's lots of other names that like you say, we've not mentioned. There's some that perhaps are trying to get away from the company. I mean, we mentioned the Revival earlier on, Luke Harper being another, Sasha Banks. There is a number of talents that perhaps for the grass is greener on the other side. So very interesting there when you mentioned the wild card rule there, and especially the fact that you said there as well, the Survivor Series will be interesting to see what they do with that later this year. Stomping grounds, I agree with you. But a question I would say to you is, with this wild card rule, would it actually save WWE this idea if they did have Raw versus SmackDown as a rivalry going forward throughout the calendar year? Would it make things more interesting in the wildcard rule?
I mean, it would, but then the only issue we've got at the moment is there's no one really leading each brand. So when this split, the latest brand split happened, it was all about competing and who was going to be the A brand. And you had Stephanie and Kurt, I think, to start with, and obviously you had Shane and Daniel Bryan, and it was interesting, and it was all about being the better brand, and there wasn't this crossover. You never saw, or if you did, it was very rare, and it usually was to promote the own brand. But now we've got, Shane's on both brands fighting The Miz. This week we've had Miz TV on Raw with Roman Reigns, and then Roman Reigns with The Miz, to kick off SmackDown. Shane's been on both, popping up because he's in a feud with The Miz and Roman Reigns to some extent. Stephanie's nowhere to be seen. I can't remember the last time I saw her on TV. There's not a general manager, as far as I'm aware, on each brand now. So it's, to me, it was at its best when it was very much one brand competing against the other. At the moment, it's not that way, and I think it could become quite stale.
Yeah, it could do. And the thing is as well, we hear that it's like 4 talents on each show per show. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, SmackDown this week had 6. So the counting is going a bit off as well. I had the Usos down, The Miz, Ricochet, Lacey Evans, and Sami Zayn. So, I mean, they're already breaking their own rules already, that there's supposed to be repercussions for the people that turn up after the 4th, which is very strange. We'll have to wait and see how that'll play on Raw. But I suppose, with the wild card factor, we currently at the moment need more convincing, it seems, that this is going to be something that's going to work going forward. But we have a wild card style match in. You've gone with Daniel Bryan and Rowan there to pick up the victory at the pay-per-view. I agree with you personally. I think that the same result is going to come from this. And at the moment, I just feel like you say, Daniel Bryan, he seems to be protected at the minute, but they need to build up this SmackDown tag team division. Raw at least has some tag teams at the minute, but SmackDown seems to be lacking, and this would be a creditable start for Daniel Bryan and Roman as a team before they perhaps move on to the likes of, I don't know, maybe downgrading, dare I say, to the likes of Heavy Machinery. That's probably where we're going to see this go. Although I must say that a vegan Daniel Bryan against the steak and weights kind of combination, we've got a little bit of interest there for promos perhaps, but match quality I'm not so sure. But we'll have to wait and see. But we've covered the wild card pretty well there, so it saves us having to go to that one a bit later on. But we've dealt with the kickoff as well. Shall we head to the main card? And we're going to start. And we mentioned Roman Reigns quite heavily in the last minute or two. So let's talk about him versus Elias. Definitely not going to be a main event match. There is a potential it could even start the pay-per-view. We'll have to wait and see. But for me personally, I'm going to take this one the lead to begin with. I feel really Elias has done a good job here in his role. He has been kind of built up a little bit as he's going to be the biggest acquisition in SmackDown Live history. Be interesting to see where he'll go after this program. But it feels like that he's the first person that's going to be fed to Roman on the blue brand. Would you agree?
Yes, I do agree. And with everything that you said there, I think what's been nice with Elias is we've seen a lot more ring action from a wrestling standpoint, rather than him just playing guitar and then having a little scrap afterwards, which tended to happen on Raw. And it seems like that's the route that they're going down with him on SmackDown. Maybe after this, we might see him start doing a few more songs again. But what is interesting is that they've put him straight in they're building him up to be the biggest acquisition, but we all know Roman Reigns is, and to have him as your first feud on SmackDown and be aligned with an authority figure in Shane is strong booking for Elias. I think I would expect Roman to win, but if they wanted to keep this side of the feud going, because I think this is potentially going to lead somewhere down the line to a Shane and Roman match, because Shane can't keep out of the ring. It wouldn't surprise me if there was maybe a bit more of an extension, and we could see this leading to SummerSlam, potentially with Roman and Shane.
Would be interesting if it was dragged out that far, but I agree with you. I think the direction from this will be Roman and Shane going forward. The question is then, does Elias get forgotten about, or is he going to be still the guy that's going to be helping Shane along the way? It's still be interesting to see how Elias is going to be played out throughout the next sort of few months on SmackDown Live. Just quickly before we go on to continue with Roman and Shane, do you think it's kind of imperative for Elias that he is given some sort of championship or something during this calendar year? It feels to me that this could be a make or break year, whether Elias makes it or doesn't in WWE as a potential top star down the line.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think we've obviously got the IC title now on SmackDown with Finn, so potentially down the line. I mean, that wouldn't be a bad feud. Finn and Elias on the SmackDown side for the IC. So I thought there was a period of time when he was on Raw when he could have easily been in that top bracket. He was starting to build some real momentum towards it, and then it kind of just tailed off a little bit. So yeah. I think he does need that little bit more of a build. But what better way to start than with Reigns, I guess.
Yeah, certainly. It's a big program to be put in. You would probably argue it's kind of an honour in WWE in this modern stage, and to be put there, that does put your name in headlights. So we'll have to wait and see how it will play out. But we mentioned there that we expect Roman and Shane to be a program going somewhere further down the line. And of course, for that to happen, that means that Shane needs to finish his program with The Miz. So we've got a steel cage match here. This has been built up over a number of weeks. I would say that this has been something now that needs to finish. But I think it's been a decent enough program. I think it's kind of become stale over the last week or two. But I have, for the whole, enjoyed this program. Would you agree that with Shane and Miz?
Yeah, I mean, because we all kind of didn't see the Shane turn coming. We all thought it was obvious that the Miz was going to turn on Shane. So I agree. I think we spoke about it around Mania time where I kind of felt it didn't. I mean, not that it didn't have the right build, because we saw it coming. Maybe it was a little bit short, but you forget that where it came from and what it was building to for me was the best in the world. That's kind of been put to one side a little bit, which I don't mind. That for me was just to get the brand away from, or the title away from CM Punk. So, but where it's gone, I thought a line had been drawn under it when Shane started feuding a little bit with Roman and getting Elias involved. So I thought that was a line under him and the Miz going over to Raw. It's obviously been brought back into it again, and a cage match is probably a good way to call it at the end of that feud, and for me it's a Miz win in that as well.
Yeah, I feel that this one has to be a Miz win now. It feels that almost now that they need to move on, and the way for this to move on, Miz is the one that needs the revenge, not Shane McMahon here. So unless we want to carry this on further and further, especially with the Wildcard Raw as well, there needs to be an area where these two now can not feel the need to have to jump brands every week, because otherwise we will be wasting one jump every week on these two guys. So I agree with you. I think the Miz is going to come away with a win here. I think there is perhaps a potential that we could see some interference within the steel cage match. I know they say that people can't get in, but we all know that they can. I wouldn't be surprised if the B team make another appearance in some form. They have not in this week been involved with Shane McMahon, but they have been in the build-up with this. Elias will be focusing on Roman Reigns, so they're going to need a different area of where they can get that interference. So I think the B team could be a potential interference, and also will be the kind of team that it's not going to hurt because the Miz would still overcome them, so they wouldn't necessarily be any more buried than they already have been on programming. So I agree with you. I think the Miz is getting the W here, and we'll be able to go to a new program on Raw.
Do you, question for you, Steve, is do you see the Miz's dad anywhere involved in the match?
Well, we did tease this at WrestleMania time if there could be a potential that the Miz's dad would actually cost the Miz. It certainly would have some interest in there, but I don't know. I kind of feel that now we need to draw a line under this. And although in the old days I kind of feel like that would have been a potential something that could happen, I just kind of feel that this will be the last pay-per-view with these two. I don't see it going further forward. So I'm going for a finishing chapter. But if you would ask me for intrigue and some interest, everyone seems to love the Mrs. Dad being involved. The amount of gifts and all sort of, things that put on with him on social media are hilarious. And it certainly would get people talking if he was to cost the Miz the match. But I think the place they should have done that would have been WrestleMania. Because I think that at that point that would have had the best impact of reaction. I don't feel that he's not been on TV for a long time now, Mrs. Dad, so I would be surprised if he was there on this occasion. But hey, we never know. We'll have to wait and see what comes along. Certainly it's an interesting program, and interesting to see where it will go next.
Yes.
But where we're going to go next is the WWE Cruiserweight Championship match, because we couldn't leave it too long into the video to do this one before we'd end up forgetting it. Tony Nese defending against Arya Daivari in what has to be described as, does it need to be on pay-per-view? It's not a match that does anything for me, unfortunately. James, does it do anything for you?
No, not to. It's such a shame, really, because I feel like they've lost the two biggest stars of 205 Live in Alexander and Murphy. Obviously, they lost a few last year as well with Ali. And I think there was a couple of others as well that might have moved around. But it feels like this is one of them matches. This to me is tea break. Go and grab yourself something to eat or go to the loo. It's such a shame, really. I've not seen any of 205 Live since, so you might be able to enlighten me on how that's been as a brand. But they needed to bring some fresh faces into that brand for me from NXT UK. Independence, look outside the box a bit, because they can't rely on the slim roster that they've now got on that brand. For me,
it just seems that a lot of the talents that they have left are the talents that are not, sadly, going to get to the main roster and not going to get anywhere unless they really repackage a lot of these people. And they've tried to with Tony Nese to repackage him, because he is the premier athlete. He is a decent in-ring competitor. We're not going to take away the in-ring work. But it's just someone like him had lost too many matches. Daivari had lost too many matches. They've been on a good streak in 2019. Daivari has not lost a match on television since his return. He was out for a long time with injury. Nese is now the champion, and he's done, not lost the match. He's done kind of well since he's been the champion. But we mentioned there about the NXT UK guys, and they were brought in for the UK shows this week. And of course, they always like to merger it on those ones. So obviously they get a chance to perform in front of the UK crowd. Ironically enough, though, we had a fatal four-way with three English guys, Jack Gallagher, James Drake, and the last one, Mark Andrews. And they were against Humberto Carrillo, which I'm not sure if I've said that correctly. But of course, he was the guy that wins the match. So three English guys that are in it, they all lose. Then we get Ligero against Tony Nese, and of course Tony Nese goes over. So great to get those guys on the brand, but if they're not going to win, they're not going to seem creditable. So that's definitely not a way to fix the brand. But I agree with you. I mean, I know there's been some recent signings in NXT. Of course, DJZ has signed for Impact Wrestling. We've got Trevor Lee, potential that these guys could come in at some point. Kushida, I mean, I think he'll be too big for 205 when it comes to him coming to the main roster. But there is some guys there that you could freshen that talent pool up a little bit. And I'm sure people would go mental hearing the idea of it. But Johnny Gargano, Pete Dunne, those guys would add some credibility to that brand and would get you watching. Of course, if they start losing to guys currently on that brand, it wouldn't help them. But I agree with you, definitely needs some freshening up. But looking at the match itself, like you say, yeah, stick the kettle on. Maybe, I don't know. If you position your breaks right, that's the match you take your break. But I think Tony Nese is going to pick up the win here.
For me, it's got to be a Tony Nese win. I think he hasn't held the belt that long. We haven't seen, well, to my knowledge, we haven't seen any defences of it just yet. So Yeah, it'd be sensible, I think. I don't think Avari's a big enough name at the moment to hold it, and Tony Nese built his way up to winning the title from Buddy Murphy, so let him run with it a bit longer for now.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Until we have someone that's built up enough that will have some credibility, I agree with you. I do think that Tony Nese will retain the Cruiserweight Championship come Money in the Bank. Next, we'll look at the United States Championship match. We've got Samoa Joe defending against Rey Mysterio. The last time we did one of these prediction videos, we probably spent longer on the prediction than the match itself. So I don't know if we should keep this one short or sweet or not, but what I would like to talk about with this match is the use of Rey Mysterio's son, Dominic. Apparently seems to have agreed terms with WWE. He seems to be going to be involved with storylines here going forward. It'll be interesting to see how long it'll be till he's involved with matches as well. But he's played his role quite well in this, I think, with Joe and Rey.
Definitely. It's still very strange though seeing him. I don't know about you, but he's still, although he's now, it looks like he's about 6 foot tall now, he still looks like a child. So the thought of him actually physically being involved in a wrestling front is still seems a bit bizarre. But you're right. I think what he has done, which has been minimal, but enough to get noticed, I would say, has been decent. And the way they've built him into this story does seem very old school WWE. I mean, we've had, when, the late Eddie Guerrero was about, we had the whole similar sort of storylines then going around about whether he was his son and things like that. So, what happened this week it was on Raw this week, wasn't it, where Cesaro said to him, he does look a lot like Samoa Joe, and he's a lot taller than you, Ray, and all that, which to me was funny, but speaking facts, really. I mean, with regards to his height, I mean, he is twice the size of his old man. So, as for the match itself, I'd say it's probably, I'd like to think it's going to be a longer match. I do think we're going to see Dominic involved somewhere. And for me, I'm going to throw it out there. I think Ray's going to win this one. Interesting.
Nice. Well, I mean, the thing is with this, I mean, Samoa Joe is normally the big bad bully who seems to normally come up short. So, I mean, there is that chance that that could happen. I want to see Joe have a lengthy reign as champion here. I still have this vision that he will become a big deal at some stage on the Raw brand. But I don't know. Hearing you speak, I feel I've kind of been swayed. I kind of agree. And the idea of Rey as United States champion does throw out these new matches and opportunities. And I don't know. Sometimes with a fresh start on the brand, I mean, Finn Balor feels like fresh with the IC belt. Joe isn't doing enough for me as champion. So,
but another thought that's just come into my mind as well is you said the right thing there as well, Steve, with him potentially being on the top bracket of WWE television, within the Universal title picture at least. And I know they had a form of feud. He injured Rollins, didn't he, when he took him down that time in the Kimura clutch? But I'd like to see them two have a decent feud. I think, if you take him out of that US title picture, he could easily be the next one to feud with Rollins potentially, and I think that would be a decent feud as long as he doesn't injure him again, which was, I think, just an awkward turn and land. But why not put him in that? I think he'd be a credible heel to have up against Rollins.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's certainly more interesting in the rumoured one that's linked in at the moment, which of course is everybody's favourite son, Baron Corbin. The face says it all there for you, ladies and gents. He does a good job as a heel, I suppose, but I don't think it's what people want to see. It's not the good kind of heel heat necessarily when people kind of want to turn off their TVs for him. But I do like some of the things they're doing with Corbin, but we'll talk more about him later on. For the Universal Championship picture, though, I agree with you. Joe would be someone I would like to see involved in that area. I think that he has the look, he has got the in-ring ability, and I think he's got the the potential to put on these 20, 25-minute great matches. So him and Rollins would be great against each other if they were to go forward, perhaps even AJ if AJ's to win the belt. But I suppose we did see a lot of Joe and AJ last year. But there is a lot of potentials either way. And I do feel that this is a match that we're looking at the pay-per-view here. This is one of those that could go either way. I think that there's a lot of room in the Raw mid-card, and it depends what they want to do with it. And I suppose, I don't know how many heels there are. I suppose Lashley would be a natural fit to go against Ray next, but I want to see Ray against someone like Ricochet. I think that would be a great match. Definitely, it would be repeating Lucha Underground. They did do a match when he was under the Prince Puma gimmick, and it was an absolutely epic half-an-hour match they did on TV then. I would like to see that on WTV at some stage, but I don't know. I agree with you. I kind of have this feeling that going into the pay-per-view, that Ray's going to be the one coming on top, regardless of where they go forward after this. But I think I agree with you. I'm going to go with the final call of Ray. Any more thoughts?
Just another heel to throw into the mix, potentially up against him, Sami Zayn. I mean, I can't see him being in the top bracket just yet, but he would be a credible guy to go up against Ray as well.
He certainly would indeed. It would be interesting to see Sami Zayn. In fact, Sami Zayn needs to get a championship as well, I feel, in WWE this year. Don't remember the last time he held a belt in WWE, if he even has on the main roster. I think, if anything, would be one of the mid-card belts, but I don't remember that happening. So it would be interesting to see how they would throw that in if Zayn was to get himself into a championship picture. But moving on next, and I think we should look at the championship matches next before we go into the Money in the Banks themselves. So we'll start with the WWE Championship, as I imagine that will probably be the one that's lower on the card. Kofi Kingston going to be defending against Kevin Owens in what's been certainly an interesting feud going forward. I think we all seen it coming as it was going along, and the interesting thing that's underlining for me on this one is the role of Xavier Woods, because he's been told to stay backstage a lot recently from Kofi Kingston. You can see there's a little bit of tension in the air there. We're all saying that Big E's going to be the guy that's going to come back and return and cost Kofi, or perhaps be the guy that's definitely going to be the one that turns on the New Day. But could Xavier Woods be the first one to do so?
Well, I wouldn't have expected it, like you said, but we've been fooled, as we recently spoke about with Shane McMahon, him turning and being the surprise. If that's what they do, then credit to them, because they've caught us all off guard. I mean, this is the first time we've spoke about it. So, but there's definite crack starting to appear, let's say. And Kofi, since he's had the belt, he seems to have this bit, not in an arrogant way, but a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and a bit like, you stay back, I can handle this, I can do this on my own. And he wants to be that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, Steve? Just someone who can fight his own battles and doesn't need to rely on the help of the New Day. So he wants to take ownership of that title, which is a good way to go. Don't get me wrong. There's not many champions that we can list who have had a team around them to support them in matches. I don't know what the deal is with Big E either. I think he's been playing up a bit on Twitter with how long he's going to be out for. Yeah. Is that just a smoke screen to say he's going to be back this weekend? Who knows? But it's not a bad shout. It's not a bad shout. I don't know how to call this match though. I'd love KO to hold the belt, because I think he, for me, is probably in my top 3 heels when he's absolutely on fire. And that the video package from SmackDown where he was saying about why he is one of the best, for me, was an awesome little package they put together there, showing since he's come up to the main roster, starting with John Cena and going through, and they had clips of the friendship with Jericho, and all the stuff he's done since then with Kofi as well. I loved last week when he mentioned about the fact that, he was trying to almost stir things up, and to say to Big E, look how quickly they replaced you, which is something you mentioned here on SCW, a few weeks ago. So it's just been a really, I think, considering how quickly it's been put together since Mania, I think now it's really starting to take shape. And what I like about it is we can usually get to these sort of matches and say it's clear that Kofi's going to keep the belt, or that KO will win the belt. I can't call this one. I wouldn't if I could choose, it'd be KO. But I'm not saying that will happen. That's not even a prediction. That's what I want to happen. But and where it goes from there and who gets involved, I just want to see this one play out. I am actually quite invested in this one.
Yeah, I'm invested as well. I'm interested to see where it's going to go. And like you said a minute ago, that we don't quite know which way it's going to go. And I think that means there has to be some credit given for the booking here, actually, which WWE Creative doesn't get a lot of recently. We seem to bash the product very quickly if we don't see something we like. But here, I think credit needs to be given. They've done a good job here with these two put together. And for me, I'm similar to you. I'm not quite sure where it's going to go. I feel if Kofi loses, he's going to be cost the belt. I don't think it's going to be simple. He wasn't good enough. But I kind of feel that part of me just looked at this week and just said to myself, well, maybe, just maybe, Kofi's not going to lose this belt yet. They've spent a good couple of weeks building him up. He had a couple of championship defenses, and he did well in those defenses. He beat more than credible people. Daniel Bryan, he beat on Raw. He beat, AJ Styles and Sami Zayn on SmackDown in a triple threat match. So I do believe that maybe the Kofi Mania could roll a little bit further into the summer. I don't think maybe the time is just yet. We've got the Saudi Arabia show coming up, of course, which is now going to be this year's Super Showdown. We've got Stomping Grounds, which we mentioned a minute ago. We've probably even got Extreme Rules before SummerSlam. So there is quite a few pay-per-view events that they could still keep the belt on Kofi if they wanted to have a fresh picture for SummerSlam. They've got time to keep it. And it's not to say necessarily that this match is going to be decided at this pay-per-view either. And I feel that if there's going to be a false finish somewhere, this could be the match where there's a false finish. And I'm going to say Kofi keeps the belt, and I'm going to say Kofi gets the win. But I'm not convinced that this feud is going to finish here.
The other thing to bear in mind is, unfortunately, we're saying about the unpredictability of this particular match, but the predictable thing is that Roman is going to get into the title picture at some point when a heel has the belt, we would assume.
Yes.
Because ultimately, if they stick him in against Kofi, I do worry that the boos could return for Roman.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it really depends on how Roman's feud plays out as well, because if we do think it's going to go down the line of him versus Shane at some point as well, which might not necessarily be one pay-per-view as well, then you're right, it could be that Kofi keeps the belt. So I think that's another thing. If they wanted to get the belt closer to Roman, or certainly keep him in that, put him in the picture a lot sooner, then I could probably see KO winning. So then we've got a feud and a face to battle a bit further on, maybe past a rematch if they want to go down that way with Kofi. But it's interesting.
It certainly is. Quick question would be, if Kevin Owens wasn't the guy to be the guy in between to hold the belt, who is the guy to hold the belt? Because Daniel Bryan's in tag team action. Randy Orton could be an option. They could throw it on him for a 14th time. Certainly wouldn't go amiss. But I do struggle to think where else they would do it, because I do think it's too soon for Andrade if he was to win the belt now. And we look at the Money in the Bank people. Finn Balor's a face. Ali, I don't think would suit being WWE champion. Just a personal opinion. I think he could suit a mid-card championship, but I don't see him in the top bracket. Who else?
The only other one that I could see coming in and absolutely, be in a squash match would be Lars Sullivan. He's the only other one that I could see. And then it being the battle that Reigns has got to take down this absolute monster. Again, a bit we're going back down the Braun Strowman Reigns feud sort of alley there. But for me, he, other than KO at the moment, he could be the only other heel to come in and almost it would be one of the matches where Kofi that's just a step too far for him. Which who knows? I think with everything that's gone on recently with Lars, which is a whole nother topic of debate, it may not happen just yet. But he could be a viable option, I think, if they wanted to build up this big kind of David versus Goliath sort of battle.
Certainly, it depends how quick they want to pull the trigger. Especially if this does cool down at any point, it just feels though with the fans and this stuff keeps going viral on Lars. I do worry for him that he's not going to get the longevity that he may have hoped for in WWE. It feels that people seem to have it out for him. I don't, and perhaps justifiably so for some of the things that have perhaps been written on social media. I mean, WWE has taken a course of action, it believes now, against stuff he's said in the past. So we'll have to wait and see how it will affect his booking long term. But I do agree he would be a viable option. And I mean, it's a shame really that we can't really pinpoint something together where we can see the belt going from Kofi to Roman with someone in between if it isn't Kevin Owens properly really at the moment. So it will be interesting to see how it all plays out. But certainly the match we've got this Sunday is definitely going to be something that we want to see, and we want to see how it's going to play out. And like we said, it can go either way. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I've gone for Kofi on that. Would your final answer be KO over here, or...
Again, it's that I would like KO to win it. Let's stick my arm out and say, yeah, I'm gonna go with KO.
Nice. Okay. Well, I think that might be the first time in the predictions we've gone opposite here. So that's certainly is interesting. It is good. Well, let's see if we can keep it on opposite opinions or the same for the Universal Championship match, because that's definitely going to have some interest in it with Seth Rollins against AJ Styles. Certainly a match that's been many years in the making. Apparently they did have a match, I believe it was it 2006 they said on the Indies this week on Raw, but only a handful of people would have seen that way back when, and of course many years has passed since. These two are at the top of their game now. I'm expecting we're going to get a classic here. If WWE are going to allow this to be a one and done match, then they should let them go completely all out and try and make the best match possible. But if I was to put a prediction on there straight off, I think Seth Rollins is going to retain. The thing that I have a bit of an issue with this feud is that they've tried to make a feud out of it. I would rather these guys just be that they're the best two in the world right now, and it's just not that Shane McMahon would agree with that, but these are two of the best at what they do right now, and let's see who's the better man. Sometimes you don't need those feuds, and we've seen this. AJ Styles, did he hit that phenomenal forearm on purpose storyline only 6 months ago with Daniel Bryan? So I feel like it's just a rehashed storyline here going into the pay-per-view. But if I'm putting a pick, I'm going Rollins. James, what can I get from you?
I agree with you on what you just said there, Steve. I think some of it has been a little bit forced. When they could have, I don't mind the kind of mic work where they'll go a bit kind of, well, I'm better than you, no, I'm better than you, and bring up their histories of titles won and feuds they've been in and things like that, and who they've competed against. But it is when it feels a little bit false sometimes, and like you say, we've seen a little bit of like you said with the forearm. Did he mean it or not? Like you say, we've seen that before. So it was interesting because I would say if anyone's come across more heelish out of the two, it's been AJ. That's my opinion. I don't know if we'll see a full heel turn from anyone. I hope it's a match where, I'm with you. I think Seth will keep the belt, but I'm hoping it'll be a match where they ends with a handshake and a respect. And then they go off and go on to do whatever their next storyline is. Yeah,
I think that would be the perfect scenario. Would be the outcome I'd like to see as well. I agree with you. Heel, as much as fun as AJ is as a heel, I don't think there's a necessary for him to do that right now on Raw. We've got enough heels. If anything, there seems to be a bit where we need AJ as a face right now. And I think he's popular enough as well as a face. I don't think there's any need to turn him heel anytime soon. So I would like to see AJ keep the face run, and I'd like to see him continue with a new feud afterwards. But I agree with you, Seth, to carry on to a new feud, more than likely against Baron Corbin, but that's if you believe the rumour mill that's going along. But we mentioned Baron Corbin. Perhaps we should move on to the Money in the Bank ladder matches, because certainly always a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue in those, and I'm going to do my best off the top of my head to not forget any names here. So let's try and do this together. We've got, on the Raw side of things then, we've got Drew McIntyre, we've got Baron Corbin, we've got Ricochet, and replacing Braun Strowman is Sami Zayn. And on the SmackDown side, we've got Randy Orton, we've got Andrade, we've got Ali, and we've got the Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor. So we've got 8 superstars there. Looking at it, we've got, I think, 3 or 4 potentials here that I think would be good shouts to win this match. It just depends on the direction that WWE wants to go in. But before I say anything, James, I want to come to you, and I would like to talk to you about this match and get your feelings on it.
I'm looking forward to this. I like the names that are in it. There's a couple that I think I still would have rather seen Aleister Black in it somewhere, probably in place of Ali, to be honest. I don't feel that the problem for Ali is he was on that kind of wave leading up to when he got his injury, and since he's come back, it hasn't quite, for me, taken off again. No. Because all of that momentum that he was building shifted over to Kofi, and then look where he is now. Yeah. Aleister Black, I think, would have been interesting because he was in that tag with Ricochet. So that would have opened up some, moments where they would have probably been facing off against each other, just them two standing in the ring, and then they have to go, which would have been interesting. But on the whole, I think taking Braun out of it is a clever move because, he won it last year. We know what you get with Braun. I think having too many big guys in these sort of matches doesn't usually work. And we've already got Drew McIntyre in there. We've already got Baron Corbin. They're two big guys. Do you know what I mean? That's, for me, is enough. You've got the wrestlers in there for high spots. All I will say is after the end of SmackDown, and not the end of Raw, but the person's match of Raw, I think, unfortunately, it's safe to say Ricochet's probably not going to win it after he'd done a runner. And not just that, it didn't look right, him with the briefcase. It just looked really weird. It didn't have that right feel. And usually, like we've said before, it's whoever's ending kind of on top from the TV show before doesn't tend to be the one that wins. So, it's a shame, but he'll be the one who has most of the high spots, I would say.
Yeah, I imagine him and Ali are going to somewhere do some sort of suicidal dive somewhere that's going to just take them both out of the match. I thought originally that was the idea of Braun being in the match, to literally do something that would, make it some stupid, insane spot, which is going to make us go, wow, and then they're out of the match completely. But I will be interested to see what they're going to do. They're going to be the sparks that are going to make this memorable, perhaps. But we've got the unpredictability factor and the real sort of, oh, my God, we don't want him to win factor of Baron Corbin. Why is he in there? Which I think a lot of fans will probably turn if he does win it, but certainly does have that. For me, that's what puts a bit of excitement with him being in it. I like the idea that the guy we don't want to win can win it. That for me, it does have a bit of appeal. Randy Orton, he's been there before. He is someone that doesn't need it, but perhaps if he was to ever get back to the top, he would need it. So he actually perhaps could be someone that could.
Just to say as well, he's the sort of person that could win it and then hold it for ages and go right under the radar. He doesn't need to be the monster in the bank or, any sort of gimmick to go with it. He would literally, you might not see him for 3 months and all of a sudden he just pops out of nowhere and cashes in. Yeah. That would be the good thing about Randy, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that entirely. And I just have to say, you mentioned gimmicks there. If anyone from WWE ever decides to watch this video, please no gimmicks with the Money in the Bank name. I do not want to hear Bliss in the Bank, Monster in the Bank, any of these now. I hate them with a passion. It doesn't work for me. Goddess in the Bank, whatever. Don't do it. I can't stand it. But if they probably watch this, it will encourage them even more, won't it? But look at the other ones we've got in the match there. I mean, Sami Zayn is a late replacement, and I agree with you. It kind of almost feels that Braun's been taken out for a storyline purpose. There was rumours that he was working hurt, but it feels that this is more storyline based. Maybe he's going to take out Drew McIntyre or Baron Corbin or Sami Zayn, and there's going to be a program with one of them three there going forward. But I feel safe to say that Baron Corbin's probably going to escape here and is probably going to end up taking on Seth Rollins after this. So it makes you wonder which of those two Braun is going to be taking out. You would imagine he'd want to take both of them out of the match. And if he was to successfully do that, that would leave it down to Finn Balor or Andrade. But my prediction is going to be the same here. I'm going to go with Drew McIntyre to win this, purely because of the fact that I do think that he's the guy with the most to gain from this match, along with Andrade. I think them two are the two that are the best candidates to win this, in my personal opinion. Drew McIntyre wouldn't necessarily be a long holder of the briefcase, but at the same time, he would be someone that he would be calculated and would know when to cash it in. He would be successful. And when you've got AJ Styles and Seth Rollins now on WWE programming for the Universal Championship, it feels almost that we're going to get Drew McIntyre interrupt that somewhere down the line quite quickly. He'd be the champion against Rollins, him being the champion against Styles, maybe a triple threat. It feels like that would be the direction. I mean, and they could go that way anyway. They don't necessarily need to give him the case, but I think it just would make sure that he would win the contract and he would win the belt, because I think he should win the belt this year. I think he's done some good building work since being on the main roster, and I think it's time to give him a go and see where it leads.
No, I agree, Steve.
So I think we could expect, really, perhaps people that don't have a match to be thrown into this. I mean, we're probably looking at talents that are not putting main event matches or championship matches. Maybe we get some of the NXT guys, 205 Live, maybe even NXT UK could be thrown here. It looks like a full roster will be going to Saudi Arabia for this show anyway, particularly from the male roster anyways. And of course, some of the WWE signed Saudi Arabian talents that were featured, I believe, on the first show that we, the first time WWE went to Saudi Arabia. Maybe they could use one or two of those talents in the Battle Royal as well. Maybe, they might get some fans on side for that. So it wouldn't surprise me on that. But I wouldn't want to pick a winner at this stage. It's far too soon to tell who's going to actually be in the match. So I think obviously we'll probably talk more about it as we get towards the Super Showdown for Saudi Arabia on June the 7th in future SCW episodes.
But that's all anyway from SCW this week. They're talking about everything, Money in the Bank there for you, as well as Bray Wyatt and other topics anyway. We do thank you for watching as always. And we hope you guys will get involved. As like I say, if you want to leave a question or a topic or anything like that, please do leave something in the comments below for us. We're happy to bring it up for you and maybe even give you a shout out as well, a bit of a plug. And I'd like to definitely introduce that. And perhaps if we get enough of them, might even do a separate video on it. I thought about an SCW wrestling question time at some stage might come into play. It would be quite cool to get people's things that they want us to discuss as topics. Would be very interesting to get your input. If anyone wants to put anything in the comments below in the YouTube video, please do that. Go and subscribe to the channel. Like I say, you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts in podcast form as well. And of course, pages on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, all SCW The Wrestling Channel, apart from Twitter, which is SCW Wrestling Channel. But that's all from us anyway. Thank you for watching as always, and enjoy Money in the Bank. And we'll be back, I'm sure, next week with another form of the podcast, and we'll be talking all the greatest stuff going on from the pay-per-view and what's going to be building towards the next show in WWE. So that's all from us, and we'll see you next time. James, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Look forward to speaking to you and hearing from you in the coming weeks.
Yes, definitely. Thank you all guys for watching. We'll see you next time here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you may be checking us out.